من زينة الإيمان أن السلام حياة قد جاء في القرآن أن السلام.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to iTREND on ITV. I'm your host, Zaheerah Bham Ismail. It's always such a pleasure to be with you. There's always information to be shared. We often discuss what's trending at the moment. This month, however, has brought light to much needed conversations, much needed discussions, things that we're so proud to see happening more in our community in terms of the discussions that are being opened up and the support networks that are being opened up. Recently on social media, I came across a group that I was a bit taken aback because I thought I always knew there was a space for this, but the fact that there has been dynamic women behind this project and deciding to actually allow an opening, a support system for so many other families, for particularly women who have gone through pregnancy loss and infant loss. And these are women in our community who stepped forward and said, let me be the voice of this support network. Let me be the voice for somebody who may need me at some point in their lives. So often we talk about when we lose our parents, when we lose our siblings, but when somebody loses a child, it's very, very difficult. There's no name for that. From the moment we are pregnant, as women, we already have dreams of what our children will be, who they'll be, what they'll end up being like. And from the moment you hear that you're pregnant, those dreams are there. Your child is as real as a child that is already living in your home and with you. And unfortunately, along that journey, that doesn't always come to completion. Some of us may lose our babies during our pregnancy. Some mums lose their babies straight after they're born. Some in very young ages, some a little bit older. And loss, no matter what age it's at, is never easy. And we want to talk about how are we able to be there for these ladies? How are we able to be a support? Because it never is just a matter of it was just a pregnancy or shukr, the child was young. It's never a matter of that. Loss is loss. And as a mother, as a father, we always feel that loss. And we carry that with us no matter what we do in our lives, no matter how many years have passed and no matter how many days go on. There's a group that's operating at the moment called Jannah's Little Keepers, a dynamic group that has provided much support for many, many women. A group that has started off very young, but I have no doubt will grow because of the amount of support that it lends and for the need that it provides. We all have this. No matter which town that you're in, there's somebody that needs the group Jannah's Little Keepers. To find out more about it, we've invited one of the ladies from the organization to come and share her story with us and a bit of information about it. Khadijah Mia, assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
It's such a pleasure to have you in studio with us. I know this is not a topic that's easy to discuss or a topic that is something on a positive note, but I do think what you bring with you when you have these discussions is a message of hope.
Yes, that's correct. We bring a message of hope. Jannah's Little Keepers was incepted around March 2018. It was initiated by Appa Fatima Khan, and she had gone through a particular loss herself in terms of a stillbirth. I myself personally have also been through several losses in my journey of life, and I can associate with that. So we saw that there was really a need, and there are many other sisters who are part of the group. Some are pregnancy doulas, some specialize in bereavement, and so on and so forth, and other mums who've had also the loss of children, decided that it was time to put together an organization or an association whereby we can provide support to women who are going through either the loss of a miscarriage, a stillbirth, or a loss of an infant.
Khadijah, for you, why the need to get involved with something like this? I read your CV. You have, Khadijah is a remarkable woman of strength, alhamdulillah. You have quite a dynamic CV. Why decide that this was something that you had to put so much of your personal self into?
Firstly, just to tell you, I'm very passionate about women empowerment and women development programs. And in my professional capacity as a business and a life coach and running my own practice, I do a lot of work with organizations and individuals whereby we help women in particular make the shift. And we help women, even in organizations and corporate, deal with internal issues that they really grapple with. Coming now to this particular journey in terms of my own life story is, I've mentioned to you earlier on, I've had 5 pregnancies. and of which only 2 were successful. So it has been a really painful journey for me in terms of going through the process of having excitement, happiness, and then disappointment, I would say, in terms of an expectation that hasn't been met. So during my journey in terms of the losses, my first was a stillborn baby. And I'm a sister of 4. So my other sisters were always successful in terms of having successful pregnancies. I wasn't. And I kept asking myself the question, why me? As Muslims, we do understand that one of the guarantees in life is death. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. From Allah do we come and to Allah do we return. So my brush with death in terms of the experience that I had losing a baby inside of me was one of the most traumatic experiences, but one of the most life-changing experiences, I would say, in terms of coming to terms with life, reality, and also the journey on. And the reassurance I had within myself was knowing that my baby was going to be waiting for me in Jannah. And therefore, Jannah's little keepers appealed to me so much. It touched and struck a chord within myself to say that if I had maybe more support from people who had an understanding and awareness of what I was going through, it would have been easier. Yes, I had a lot of support from my loved ones, my family, and everybody around me. But the magnitude of the loss that I experienced was something very personal, something that you really can't fathom and think about.
But how do we as a community help with that? And I'll tell you why. I think very often we misunderstand, or we may not have the correct words that need to be said at that time. And we don't ever go to somebody if you haven't lost someone and say, I understand what you're going through, because we won't ever be able to understand unless we've been in that situation. We can empathize with people, but we can never say, I know. And I think that's, for me, what's the beauty about Jannah's Little Keepers is that you are able to go to these women and say, I know, I've been here.
Yes, and a lot of the women that are part of our group, it's a non-profit organization, it's voluntary, you can provide your assistance to do various things in our organization, which I will share with you a little bit later on. But really, many women who have been through loss and have had these experiences, which are tragedies, but then they've turned around into positive stories of hope. So Jannah's Little Keepers is a sisterhood amongst women, just to tell you that you're not alone, that if you require any support, any encouragement, any assistance, we are there for you. And to also, with the Islamic ethos around that, we're able to make sense of life and death in a very positive, hopeful way. And it's not just brushing it aside to say, now you've lost your child will be waiting for you in Jannah. There are a lot of raw emotions, feelings that someone has to go through. So we acknowledge that. We help the person in terms of coping with their daily activities as they've got to get on with life, dealing with maybe children that they may still have, their spouses as well, in terms of understanding how to manage situations of that kind. So there's a number of ways in which we can try and assist a woman who is going through such loss.
I think, what you've said now for me resonates so much, because I think very often we're all guilty of it, where we say, your child is in Jannah now, alhamdulillah, and we almost want to move on the conversation. And I think what you said now about the fact that, yes, that's one aspect of it, and alhamdulillah for being grounded in our faith, because it gives us that anchor of hope to be able to wake up every day. But these women also have emotions that have to be dealt with, and very raw emotions about the loss of a child.
Exactly. And going through that process of having the loss of the child, as I said to you, it's an expectation of hope that you have when you just fall pregnant. The excitement and the positive energy that is associated with that. Some mums will have the nursery already done, and they'll have baby clothes, and they'll have things in place, in terms of that expectation of coming home with a baby in their arms. And now they come home to an empty place. So there is a lot of sadness associated with such loss. My second pregnancy then was actually a miscarriage at 3 months when I tried for the second time. And once again, I was very, very despondent, because I felt that I was not reaching my womanhood in the true sense of the word, because I wasn't successful. So I felt like a failure. I felt that I wasn't able to achieve what other women could achieve. And I think that's the tragedy amongst us, that we really don't have support around us in the way that we can voice our feelings and emotions. And having a loss sometimes is not really by society recognized as a severe loss, one of a miscarriage or a stillbirth. It's kind of brushed aside. Yes, it's acknowledged to an extent, but really the raw emotions and feelings of having a life that is living inside of you, a heart that is beating that no longer is there, is huge in terms of the sense of helplessness, despondency. And loss is associated and is synonymous with so many different feelings, despair, anger, and you go through guilt as well.
Do you think we as a community also perpetuate this notion of a woman's success being able to be birthing of children? Because I often find that the moment someone is married, we often go and we'll say, when are you having a baby? When are you having a baby? Once you've had your first baby, when's the next one coming? And there's this added pressure that we put on women that everybody has to have a child.
100%. There's always the striving for excellence and perfection, and with women we have to do everything right based on our society, culture, communities, where we live, what we do, the families we brought up in. It's always about making sure that you tick the box.
Yes.
Have you done this? Now you're married. After getting married, there's a couple of years, then you're going to have a baby. After that, you've got to do something else, and so on and so forth. So somehow, by not achieving those objectives as you set as goals for yourself, through the pressure from everyone else around you, you actually feel that you're all alone now. And many women don't even talk about it. They're shameful of their experience. So we want to basically appeal to a lot of women out there that you are not alone. Jenna's Little Keepers is a support organization where we are there for you during your time of difficulty, during your time of need. We're there to listen to you. We're there to empathize with you. We're there to help you and support you in whichever way you require that form of assistance. If you don't want to say anything, it's also fine. We're there just to give you just a lending hand. We're there to just give you a listening ear if you want to chat, but we're there to give you the emotional support and functional support as well.
Absolutely. We're going to have to take a very quick ad break. When we come back after this ad break, we'll give you more information on Jenna's Little Keepers and how you can get in touch with them or even help and support the program. Stay tuned. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome back after that ad break. We're chatting to Khadijah Mia, a woman who has got a remarkable profile in terms of woman development, what she gives back to our community and to society as well. But today her place here is part of Jenna's Little Keepers, and that is a group that is doing absolutely remarkable work, much needed work in our community. And Khadijah, it leads me to the question that I hope that this is something that's offered countrywide and not just in Johannesburg.
Yes, just to share with you in terms of how the process works, etc. Currently we have on Instagram, we've got an Instagram page, a Facebook page, and via WhatsApp we can be contacted. We've got a group of ladies that are the first point of call. So if anybody's going through a difficult experience, such as a miscarriage or a loss or a stillbirth, and is aware of it even prior to the event, or is going through the experience or after, they can contact us at any time. What we provide women with is for functional support. We are there to assist them. So we've got volunteers that come on board as volunteers. They may not have a background in terms of counseling or providing emotional support, but they want to assist us with doing other tasks and activities, going to the hospital, doing visits, helping the lady with chores at home. So maybe during the time of loss, she may need pickups and drop-offs, and she may need assistance in that regard for food or cooking. Many volunteers come on board to assist with that. Then we have support sisters. The support sisters, as I said to you, are diverse from different backgrounds. Many of them have had loss, but even if you don't have loss, you can still come on board and be a support sister if you've got background in terms of dealing with people and helping them emotionally to give them that encouragement and support. So we have that medium of support, and we also then provide ladies who have gone through loss with a specific pack. This is one of the packs.
Tell us a little bit about these packs, because I think this is such a lovely thing to be given, because you're not almost left alone. Besides the fact that somebody comes to sit next to you to hold your hand through this journey, you're also given something to take with you.
Correct. We have these packs, but before I go on to that, just the question you asked in terms of whether we are nationwide or we're just restricted to Johannesburg. We function and operate from Johannesburg. However, we do have a lot of sisters who are based all over. So we've helped over plus minus 50 women so far since the inception of our group. Many women don't want to meet in person. They want us to call them. So we do telephonic support. We do WhatsApp support, online when they want to just ask us questions, or they're in hospital and they need help. We provide that support. And then we do one-on-one sessions with ladies also if they require that. We've gone also across the borders of South Africa. We've helped women in Maputo as well that have come to us for assistance. So we would like, our goal is later to have custodians in each area or region that can centrally coordinate and manage the activities. But we do have women all over. We have ladies in our group from KZN, from Durban, Pietermaritzburg, Witbank, and so on.
And I think the lovely thing about social media at the moment and WhatsApp or Skype is that it gives you access to people no matter where they're based.
Correct, that's right. Wherever they're based, we can provide them with the support and what they're comfortable with. It's also a very confidential process. It's private. Many women who are going through loss, especially with stigma that is attached to miscarriage, loss, and women feeling, as I said earlier, ashamed or shy about what they're going through. We make sure that we maintain confidentiality, we're professional in what we do, and nothing will be told to anyone or shared with anyone. People should be comfortable to come to us to be able to get the relevant help that they require.
That's remarkable, because for me, confidentiality is always a huge thing. I think for women to have a safe space where you can say, I'm disappointed, or I feel betrayed, or I'm hurt, and not feel like you're going to be judged for it also. Provides such a wonderful platform and a network of safety, and that's what we all need.
Most definitely. So we provide these information packs when a person has gone through loss. What we have in there is these booklets, Consolement for a Grieving Heart, so somebody can read this and it can give them a sense of comfort. We have other books on the virtue of remaining steadfast when you are losing a child, that's in there. We also have, based on the Fatawa, so we have Maulana Suhail from Marlborough, Wadi, and he's on call to also provide us with the necessary advice and support on the Fatawa in terms of what to do, not to do. If you are going through a loss, especially women need to know with Salah, when can they read Salah and Nifaz, all of that. So we've got also a little question and answer little sheet in there. So whatever questions they may have pertaining to that can be answered. In addition to that, we also have this little pack that we give out to mums who've had miscarriages or losses. It's just your general pack with your maternity pads and, you know, things that you may need in hospital when you're going through the loss that you may not have catered for, because now you're all of a sudden going in. So it gives them that. We have a little tisby as well in there. You know, just some little form of comfort, things that can comfort them and just get them through that difficult time. Some of the ladies, as I said, also have got a lot of knowledge in terms of how to manage the administrative processes. When you go into hospital and you're having a stillborn baby, you know, you want to obviously take the baby back home and, you know, there's a whole process. What happens? You have so many questions. Is there a janazah salah? Should you give ghusl? How to do it? The kafan and so on. So what we also provide is we provide women with also the knowledge, information. There's government legislation in terms of hospitals. You know, you've got to fill out so many forms and all the administrative stuff that goes with it. So we help them to fast track the process so that they can have the release of the baby as soon as possible and give the baby the burial that it requires. We also provide kafan. So what we do is, there are many burial societies out there, but with little babies that are lost, it's so tragic. And what we do is, based on the size of the baby, we will have the coffin arranged so that that can be provided to the mother as soon as possible, and we can assist also with ghusl and so on. So we do require volunteers for all of that.
That's absolutely amazing, and I do hope that every community, every mosque and every burial community takes your numbers down and actually keeps in touch with you, because I think, you know, it's one thing when we're dealing with loss and having to deal with the aspects of going through the processes, but to know that somebody will help the mum and hold the mum's hand through the process, for me, is just huge.
Yes, it is indeed. So we are here as I said, a sisterhood to help women who are going through loss, provide them with sympathy, with empathy, with guidance, with care, with education, and for them to just come around and talk to us. Sometimes just talking about something and expressing yourself is the process of healing. With my journey and my story, I said my second was a miscarriage, and alhamdulillah, my third pregnancy was successful. I had a son, and I have a son who's Yusuf, who is now going to be almost 16 years of age. And he's the biggest gift that I could ever have. My fourth pregnancy again was a miscarriage once again, and that just the voice that you hear when someone tells you there is no heartbeat is the most difficult and traumatic thing for you to hear. You know, as I said, the brush with death inside of you is something that I think it's just something you can't really describe as a mother and as a woman that you go through. My fifth pregnancy, alhamdulillah, was successful, and I'm blessed with a little boy, Ismail, who is now 9 years of age. But I also realized, and everybody comforted me and gave me a lot of support, especially my family, as I said earlier. My family is amazing. My sisters and everybody around me really provided me with lots of love, lots of care, lots of support. My husband, my children, are there now. And it's about building a future and building a sense of hope within oneself, even if you've had loss. There's always hope at the end of the day in terms of trying again. And if it isn't successful, then that's not meant to be. As I said, as Muslims, we know that your destiny is mapped out for you. And death is the constant. So we also need to learn to detach from situations. Attachment is one of the things I've learned through this process and through this journey, that you need to be mindful now of others, mindful of situations that you're in. And you need to let go. By letting go, you forgive yourself and you heal.
Yes.
So many women also, when they go through such loss, they put a lot of pressure on themselves. I have to have another baby. It has to work out. If it doesn't, what then? How will I get through my situation in life? So I think all of those things are really difficult for women to bear in terms of the pressure and in terms of the situations that they're all in individually in their own lives.
I think, you said that Taqdeer, we all believe in faith. We know that whatever has been destined for us is where we will be and the journey we'll go through. But what you provide along that journey, for me, that is again a gift from Allah.
That's
because
true.
To say that you're not alone and that somebody will hold your hand through that process is a gift that I know for many, many women out there, for many families, it's just priceless. You can never put anything to that. While we are talking about the support for women, what happens to the fathers? Is there a support network already in place or something that's planning to be in place for fathers that are going through this as well?
That's a very good question that you've asked. We have been talking about that and deliberating around what are the options for men, because we as women just provide the service to women only. But we are considering having other men, like also spouses of ours or other men who generally also can associate with loss or have had loss themselves, and volunteers who would like to get involved in that initiative so that they can also provide help, guidance, assistance to the grieving father.
Yes.
What we can do is just orientate the woman around to what's going on in terms of the actual loss, help her to deal with the process in itself, help her to be aware. We have some questions, in fact, and answers, and we have some advice that we provide also in our information pack about, how to deal with situations when people, are around you, what to say and not to say. So for the family as well, we provide support and advice. So the husband will get that,
yes.
In terms of making sure that he's very mindful and aware of not to really, and sensitive around a woman's needs and her requirements. But we definitely want to have a movement later by having men also on board so that they can provide the necessary support and guidance to the males who are going through the process with their wives.
And for many of us who are watching this, who are saying, this is something that is so needed, even I can imagine the amount of people I know offhand already who I could buy this for or take it through. How are we able to get involved? How are we able to purchase packs? How are we able to support you when you're going out doing this kind of work? Because I think, if we can't actively be a part of it and you're not able to be a volunteer or a support member in any way, at least try and fund it or be a part of it in some manner, or even just make dua for them. Because I think, as a community, these efforts work when we all collaborate on it.
Yes, most definitely. I think that's also really legitimate. Thanks for raising that. We would really, one of our goals also is to get sponsors on board. We'd like to also reach other outlying areas, like areas where women are poverty stricken and that need assistance. It's all good and well that we help a lot of women in the community and around us, people who have the means to do certain things, but there are so many women out there, Zaheerah, that actually don't have basic essentials to go to hospital in terms of having this particular pack with regards to the items that I've just mentioned that are in there. So we want to go to other areas where people are in dire need for this kind of assistance, and sponsors can help to contribute towards funding these kind of things as well as other initiatives. We want to also put a training program in place, which I'm also assisting the group with, to also take people through that process in terms of orientation, how to deal with a grieving person, how to deal with with loss, when you're sitting with someone and so on and so forth. So we want to do that as well, and maybe go to all the different regions and locations to do that with the ladies. So we want to build this organization wider to get the necessary help and the necessary support.
Fantastic. We wish you and your team the best of luck on this journey. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it a complete success. I think, as I mentioned a number of times, what you're providing is a gift of dignity, a gift of hope, and a promise of something at the end of the day, that they'll be able to get through this. And I think for us as a community, the gift you're giving us is to be able to be guided to say the right things, that we don't hurt people at a time that they're the most vulnerable. So Jazakallah to you and your team. May you be eternally blessed for what you are doing.
Jazakallah khair, Zaheerah, for having us on board. And for all mums out there, just to know, especially if you're going through any painful experience with regards to loss, with a miscarriage or a stillborn, know that you're not alone.
Absolutely.
And please know that your baby is in a better place in Jannah with Ibrahim alayhi salam. And inshallah, you will be meeting your baby.
Alhamdulillah.
In the future, Ameen.
Ameen. And with beautiful words of hope like that, this is a group that is providing hope to our community and provides a much needed support network for so many women who I can be assured of that whether they went through it now or whether they went through it 20 years ago or 30 years ago would feel the same sort of pain around it. I'm so thankful that we are blessed in our community to have women who are taking this initiative, and Maulana Suhail as well, who have taken the initiative to put together this project and to allow us to be a part of it. Follow them on on their social media pages. I'll also post up details a little bit later as well, and be in touch with them. See how you can assist and how you can be a part of this network. Stay tuned. When we come back, we continue the conversations around mental health awareness. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to iTREND on ITV. I'm your host, Zaheerah Bham Ismail. We were just chatting to Khadijah Mia, who spoke to us about infant loss and pregnancy loss and the difficulties associated with that, and the organization that they've started, Jenna's Little Keepers, a remarkable organization. But continuing the conversation, we're now speaking to Dr. Fatima Jeenah on mental health awareness. And something she just reminded me about as well was a few years back, we've been running the show now, alhamdulillah, for about 3 years. And 3 years back, when she messaged me and she said it's a topic that needs to be discussed in our community, I did say to her, mine is a more light-hearted show, I'll pass on the details to the producers and perhaps for another show. But I'm so glad that this is a conversation that has come up in our community so strongly, a much needed conversation. I think I was not aware of how greatly this conversation was needed. I wish I had spoken to her on the show 3 years ago as well, but there's a time for everything, and alhamdulillah, that time has arrived. And as a community, I think we have embraced Mental Health Awareness Month to such an extent that everybody is talking about it, and that we're opening the doors for women and for men and for children who are going through that. So let's start up this conversation without any further ado. Dr. Fatima, assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
Dr. Fatima Jeenah, you're a well-known psychiatrist in our community, but the word psychiatrist has always been plagued with something must be wrong with me if I need to go and see a psychiatrist. Something means I'm mentally not stable. Tell us a little bit about what it actually is.
Psychiatry is actually a medical speciality. It was formulated to help individuals who are found to be suffering from something other than just a physical illness, and something that was beyond what just a physician looking at the body was able to cope with. And that's where the field really grew from there. As a psychiatrist, we train primarily as a medical doctor, and subsequent to that, we specialize in the field of psychiatry. So we have a good sound knowledge of our medical knowledge, with an added benefit of being able to explore the psychological aspects. So very importantly, when we think about mental health, we're looking at a person's emotional, psychological, and social well-being. And really that determines how we talk, how we act, and how we engage with our world and our environment. And when that's affected, it affects how we do those things, how we make decisions, how we function on a social and occupational level. And it's exceptionally prevalent in our community, not just our community, but in South Africa as a whole. The latest stats show that 1/3 of South Africans suffer from some or other mental illness, which is a scary statistic, knowing that not all those people are actually getting help and going to get help.
I know that, when I've been reading up about what's happening with children, we're finding kids are getting depressed from the age of 10 diagnosed with clinical depression. We're finding women, even around our age, who've had depression all these years, have never known what to call it, have almost had the stigma attached to it, because you're supposed to have faith and just be okay and not be allowed to have any of these difficulties. I also find that, with any other illnesses, it's visible and people can deal with it, whereas with any mental health illnesses, it's not visible. So it's so difficult for people to explain what they're going through, but also for us as a community to show some empathy towards that.
So it's definitely not an illness that you can outwardly see, unless it's perhaps a psychotic disorder where an individual is acting out or behaving in a strange manner. And definitely to get someone to understand what you're going through and what you're experiencing is really difficult. Mental health, like you said, affects children, affects adolescents, it can affect you in your adulthood. And we need to be aware that it's not just a certain time period when you can get it, and it can happen at any stage in life.
So I have to ask you then, we're speaking about mental health awareness, but specifically I'd like to discuss depression and anxiety and stress. And these are things that we just seem to gloss over, thinking it will be okay. Is depression genetic?
So when we look at mental illnesses, not just depression, if we look at them as a whole, it's a multifactorial underlying cause to it. So definitely there's genetic factors, and it's a strong, especially in depression, there's a strong genetic preponderance. We then added to that environmental stresses. You look at certain abnormalities, or what we call imbalances in neurotransmitters in the brain, and a combination of all of those would then subsequently lead to the development of a mental illness like depression.
How do people, and I ask specifically about women purely because I've dealt with a lot of women, how do they know when it's time to actually go and say, now I need help, I'm not managing this on my own?
So when we think about depression is essentially, we all have good days and bad days. We all have certain lows, or we feel, with a lot of stress going on at the moment, we feel life is just really difficult to handle. But depression is essentially defined as a sustained low mood, where one loses your interest in activities that previously gave you a lot of pleasure. You start having marked effects in your neurovegetative features, which are your appetite, your sleep, your energy levels. It causes problems in your cognition, be it your memory and your concentration. And really, it's a progression of those symptoms. And when it starts affecting your social and occupational functioning, it's really a time that you need to go and get help and seek help and try and find a solution for what's going on.
What happens... Actually, let me just take you back a bit. When we talk about adults, how young are we now seeing children coming in? Or as parents, how are we aware of the triggers that are causing problems in our kids that we can deal with early on, or that we can assist them and be there for them early on?
So it's quite interesting you bring that up. The Mental Health Awareness Month was created to try and commemorate patients that have mental illness, to create more awareness and educate people, as well as to try and reduce the stigma around it. And the World Mental Health Federation annually chooses a topic or a focus for Mental Health Awareness Month. And this year in particular, the focus is young people and mental health issues in a changing world. And it's very much about our exposure to human rights violations, our exposure to violence, be it in our homes, schools, our environments, our businesses. Our children are exposed to the internet on a daily basis. And as much as social media and Facebook, the internet, Instagram, all of those are really beneficial in getting the word out there for things like mental illness. At the same time, it exposes them to a lot of traumas and a lot of negative things that are happening in society. Internet also exposes them to things like cyberbullying and cyber crimes. And now with the new wave of video games that are quite violent in nature, our children are being exposed to this. And more we're seeing people present with depression at a much younger age. So we're looking at their sort of early teens with the pressures of, studying, matriculating, and subsequently going to university. We're finding a high increase rate in those young adults as well.
how are we as parents able to combat that? Because I'm thinking about all the things you're mentioning, and I know a number of boys who these video games are just taking over everything. And I find we as parents almost try and justify why it's okay for them to be there.
So we can finish our work.
So we can finish our work. I have my own daughters who I know have social media issues, and I've been saying to them, actually from now onwards, at a certain time, the phones and all your iPads, everything needs to be left in my room, and no one is allowed to keep them in their rooms, and we're trying to control time. But we as adults are guilty of it. And I watch adults our age having this bullying fights on social media, which is just ridiculous. But we're seeing it around our age, and we're addicted to our phones, and we're constantly doing all our work on our phones, so we barely have a moment to lift our eyes up. How are we able to find that balance between our children and where we are? And this ties into my question to you also is, amongst our generation, this need to have this perfect filtered life that we're seeing is also causing a lot of anxiety and stress.
For sure. You see someone on Instagram, for instance, and you follow their page and you look at what appears to be a perfect life, and that's what you want to aim to achieve, which immediately affects your self-esteem, it affects your mood. And if you're already suffering with problems in those areas, it just exacerbates it. And I think really we need to step back, and we need to look at our family and our system and our community and see how best we can support each other. And as a family, I think spending more time with each other one-on-one instead of just using our phones or the internet, and actually talking to our kids and really being with them, I think that allows them the space and the opportunity to be able to express themselves in other ways other than just on the internet and social media.
Absolutely. And the stigma that's attached to it, with us coming up as a community, the fact that we are becoming more aware of it, the fact that we are saying, actually, we have a problem, that we need to deal with it. How has that changed how you dealt with in the community? Because as I mentioned before, people always saw psychiatrists as, oh, you have to be mad, or something needs to be wrong with you if you need to see a psychiatrist. Exactly. So how has that changed where you fit in at this point?
It's been amazing, especially this year, like you pointed out. The 10th of October, so within the month, the 10th of October is World Mental Health Day. And it was amazing to actually see international celebrities, but also a lot of our local celebrities, and even just some of our bloggers posting their own experiences in terms of a mental illness or what they've gone through in their life. And I think that creates awareness, and it actually helps people understand that this is not a secret. I don't need to keep it a secret, and I can actually go out and get help. We've had a very prominent professor within the field of medicine who committed suicide a few months ago, which also triggered a lot of sort of interest and a lot of people coming to seek help. So definitely it opens up our role to the community as to what we can actually do to help individuals. And it's not just us as psychiatrists. I think medical doctors are trained within the field of psychiatry. We've also got a lot of allied workers like social workers, occupational therapists, that deal with patients with mental illness. And I think it's opened all of us, as a group of practitioners, to show that we can help individuals in different ways.
Absolutely. And I'm so glad those doors are opening and those conversations are happening, because as we mentioned, it's something that's long overdue in our community. And I'm so glad that people are finding the ways to talk about it. And the one thing you mentioned now was the fact that stories had come up on social media, whether it was with bloggers or with celebrities and things like that. And I must say, I was initially taken aback, because when I read some of the stories, I thought, these are brave people to actually put yourself out there, to be willing to share a story about yourself.
For sure.
It takes a lot of braveness, but it also breaks down taboos around the fact that we have to have these perfect lives that are just not fitting.
That's so true. You look at these people and you realize actually the same as the rest of us, they're all going through some or other issue. And the advantage is that they're showing how they got help and how they got better, how they healed, how they've progressed, which is optimistic for someone who's feeling very depressed, who's feeling very anxious and feels quite hopeless at that stage. Knowing that there is hope out there is very useful.
Absolutely. We're going to take a very quick ad break, because the conversation I want to have after this, I'm hoping won't be interrupted. So stay tuned. When we come back after the ad break, we'll continue the conversation on mental health awareness. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to the last segment of the show. We're chatting to Dr. Fatima Jeenah, a well-known psychiatrist in our community, about mental health awareness. Dr. Fatima, we were talking a little bit now about social media, the fact that it has been more discussed, it's more out there, we are more accepting and understanding of it. When I look at the problems we have in our community, even if it's from depression, eating disorders, suicide. For suicide, I keep saying to people, don't worry about what's happened. The fact that we as a community allowed somebody to feel alone and to feel that they had no hope is more as an indictment on us and what we've provided. And I think we've seen it happen more and more in our community. And that's why perhaps these doors are opening to say, actually, we need to discuss this as a community. What are we missing?
The scary statistic is that on an average day, 23 suicides take place in South Africa. And if we look at suicide attempts, it's tenfold that amount on a daily basis, which is scary. It shows us that people are feeling alone, people are feeling very desperate to reach a state where you want to end your life.
And for me, what are we as a community, we have to be answerable for that. Because if we are letting anyone feel that isolated, that depressed and without hope, then we failed in our job as keeping our community together. It then leads me into my question with regards to our young girls and boys who feel that they have to look a certain way and fit a certain profile and a certain image to be okay or accepted. How can we move social media in a positive way to reinforce just accepting who we are as we are and understanding if you have a problem, there's help that's available? How are we able to use that in a positive light?
I think, first of all, educating people about the reality of the prevalence rates of these disorders, educating people about how it can present and what are the signs and symptoms to really look out for, and educating them that there is help out there. Another thing is using a lot of the social media in a more positive way in terms of showing people that life is not just about being a model figure and fitting this perfect mold, but actually you can succeed in life irrespective of who or what you are. And I think it really lends about a person's self-esteem and their upbringing and how confident they are. And we need to kind of identify those who are struggling with those issues and try and build up their self-esteem and their self-image and their self-worth, really, to say that I am okay with who I am and I can succeed.
Yes. And I think that's something as women we don't hear often enough, and we don't resonate it often enough. I know I always tell my daughters, and this is something I learned from one of their previous principals, that you as you are, you're enough. And I think, we don't reinforce that because we keep saying, but you need to be a little bit better at this, or but you need to
do this.
Yes. So does that start, do we say the buck stops with us, or do we say it stops with influencers, or does it stop with our teachers? Or do we all take a collective community responsibility?
It always starts at home, and starting off with your parents, especially, your mother and your father supporting you and guiding you. From there, we're looking at our educators to guide our children to focus not on their outward image, but really on their potential and what they can put out there. So like we spoke about, we're going back, but social media has such a strong influence on people, and really getting bloggers and Instagrammers to promote just well-being and mental health well-being, and to accept who you are and how you are. I think that's really important.
For many of our viewers, not everybody is based in Johannesburg. Many are in a number of outlying areas and are still having the same difficulties we're discussing, but may not have access to be able to meet the Dr. Fatimas of the world. How are people able to access adequate mental health care?
So look, I think your starting off point would be a primary healthcare clinic where you'd see a family physician or your general practitioner. Like I mentioned earlier, they've all been trained in basic mental health issues, and if it's a simple, uncomplicated case, they would easily be able to help you. Should they then be struggling to manage, they would then refer you to a psychiatrist, who, like I said, is a specialist in the field, who would then be able to take it a step further. I think if you are struggling on a personal basis, seeking help from a psychologist is also a good starting off point to discuss your problem. they can work with you as much as they can and provide support, and should they need to refer you to a specialist, they would do so. We're also very fortunate in our country to have quite a few non-governmental organizations and non-profitable organizations that run support groups and have crisis and helplines. Institutions like the South African Depression and Anxiety Group is a very useful resource to be able to get the information that you need and try and get some help. And I think also if we within our communities provide that support. So something like Islamic Care Line in our community here in Johannesburg is a really important and vital a resource that's available. And, those are different ways that an individual can get help. But other than that, I think just seeking help from your friends and family and actually talking to people and having friends and family that are able to support you through your journey, not someone who's going to be, and I think this is something we need to be aware of when we interacting with people who are suffering from mental illness, is not to be judgmental and not to kind of brush a person off and say, be strong. Your yaqeen and your faith in Allah is not strong enough. Pull yourself together. I think acknowledging that, yes, it is a problem, acknowledging that the person is going through something really real and difficult and helping them to get help. I think that's more useful than telling someone, be strong.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think so many women talk about the fact that they told their faith is affected if they go through depression, and there's no truth to that.
No, for sure. There's definitely, we read in the Sunnah, and we've always told different verses of the Quran to read to when you are struggling with depression or with any illness for that matter. And I think your faith is something that carries you through, irrespective of whether you're suffering from a medical illness or a psychiatric illness. And that's our stable base. And if we take from that and add on treatment, be it medical treatment, psychiatric treatment, that's when we can actually just go a step forward.
So then I have to ask you also, with many of us having access to psychologists, when do you know you need to be seeing a psychologist, and when do you know you need to be seeing a psychiatrist?
Okay, so the difference between a psychologist and a psychiatrist, the psychologist is essentially an individual who provides psychotherapy, be it supportive psychotherapy or very specific types of therapy like cognitive behavioral therapy, etc. A psychiatrist, a psychologist cannot prescribe medication, essentially. A psychiatrist is the person who can offer, who would basically be able to assess and give you a diagnosis as well as then treat you with medications.
But Dr. Fatima, I have to then ask you also about the medication. Very often people say, you know what, just be careful about taking medication. You're going to be addicted to it. Once you get onto medication, it's difficult. You can't get off it. Where's the fact and where's the fiction in that?
Look, there's a huge stigma around medications, especially what we call neuroleptic drugs, or drugs that treat psychiatric illnesses. The reality is, when we're treating someone, the medication is called basically leads to neuronal changes, so changes within the neurons of the brain. So when we start a medication, we start at a low dose and increase it slowly. If you're going to abruptly stop that process, you're definitely going to have a bad reaction to it or develop side effects. And therefore, once you've reached a state where your medications can be stopped, it needs to be tapered down slowly. So it's not an abrupt end to medications, but really a planned thing with your treating doctor.
And obviously, because this is monitored by a doctor, a psychiatrist, this is also part of the process. It's not something you can just go home, decide you're taking medication, stopping medication,
today
restarting.
I'm taking it, tomorrow I'm not taking it. So it's a very, it needs to be monitored very carefully. You need to have a clinician monitoring your side effects to the medications, monitoring your dosages. With certain medications, we do regular blood levels to check if it's adequate. And, you really need to do it under supervision. And it's not something that you can take like an analgesic if you have a headache.
Absolutely. And I think that's the part we also miss, is the fact that, it needs to be monitored and it needs to be part of responsible care for ourselves.
For sure. Another big factor is getting people to understand and gain insight into their illness, and subsequently be compliant with the medications. Yes, you've made the diagnosis, but to get them to understand that they have this illness and that the medication may be for a period of time, or in certain illnesses may be for life. I think that's a part that we struggle with quite significantly. And if you have family members that are very supportive of you, and there's no real stigma around you being diagnosed with an illness and needing to take treatment, makes that process of staying compliant much easier.
Absolutely. Dr. Fatima Jeenah, you're an absolute wealth of information, and we thank you so much for your time taken out of your practice to be with us today and to educate us on mental health awareness, a topic that is much needed. And I know we've only just skimmed over the top of it, because there's so many more other mental health issues that needs to be discussed. I know previously on our show we've briefly discussed bipolar disorders, we've discussed other issues, but we'll have to get you back here to go through a lot more of that as well.
Really, my hope for the future is that we reach a time where individuals can feel safe enough to admit that they need help, to get the help that they need, and then subsequently comply with the treatment just as they would with any other physical illness.
Absolutely. And I think with doctors like you around, there's no doubt that we're making that transition a lot easier and a lot more acceptable in the society, so that nobody ever feels alone again.
We're very fortunate in our community. We have a number of Muslim psychiatrists, predominantly female Muslim psychiatrists.
I noticed that.
We're quite a few of us, and a lot of us are within the sort of Johannesburg, Gauteng area. And I think it's a resource that is available within the community and should be used as much as it can.
Shukran. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
We're truly appreciative of it. As Dr. Fatima Jeenah said, there's a wealth of information within our community, a number of psychiatrists that are able to help you through, while understanding the culture, the religious background that you come from, and will be able to take you to where you need to be. And as Dr. Fatima said, it's imperative that we as a community provide safe spaces for people around us, because today it could be you, tomorrow it's going to be me, a member of my family. And as a community, we need to be providing spaces where people feel comfortable enough to be able to say, I need help. And we need to be there to be able to say, we'll walk with you, and we'll be able to find you the right person who's going to give you the help you need. All you need to do is be compliant with it, and inshallah you'll come through a little bit stronger at the end of the day. You can get in contact with Dr. Fatima Jeenah, who I'm sure will guide you in terms of finding the right people around you to help you should you need it. Our producers will also be able to help you should you need any form of assistance. We thank you so much for joining us on air today. It has been such an information-filled morning, but also one filled with two ladies who are giving hope, who are giving the promise of help and the promise of not being alone, that not one of us can sit back and say we are alone, or that we don't feel like we're providing that support for people around us. Let's make a difference. Let's stand up and make a difference, so that no one in our community ever feels that there is no hope for them, or that they are desperate, or that they are alone. Shukran so much for joining us on air today. I look forward to seeing you next week, same time, same place. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.